2 weeks ago, I sold my workhorse Sony a7 IV, which I've had since it came out 2 years ago, and replaced it with the Sony a7C II, which some people may think is crazy, but in reality, in my opinion, the a7 II is a mini a7 IV, but better and also cheaper. But the biggest question is the a7C II right for you? In a word, probably. Yes. I think so. The a7C II, one of Sony's newest cameras alongside the a7CR, is essentially a mini a7 IV. It's the same sensor, being 32 megapixels. It does 4K, 422, 10-bit, up to 30 frames per second with no crop, and then a 1.5 times crop in 60 frames per second, and 120 frames per second it does at 1080p. So literally the specifications are the exact same as the a7 IV. So it's a fantastic powerhouse, really small compact camera for both photo and video. So I've been using the a7C II, like I mentioned, for the past 2 weeks, and I did sell my a7 IV, which I mentioned once again has been my workhorse for 2 years, alongside my FX3, which I acquired a few months ago. The a7 IV has become a backup video camera, but a primary photo camera when I'm not using my Leica Q2, and if I want to change focal lengths. So the a7C II has some big shoes to fill, essentially. But I've been thoroughly enjoying my Leica Q2 and its form factor, and the a7C II kind of feels like a Leica Q2, particularly when I pair it with some certain lenses, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the point of this video is to hopefully answer some questions people may have about the a7C II. Is it worth it? And hopefully just add to someone's decision-making process for looking for a new camera, because you may be looking to buy your first camera or do something similar that I did and switch from an a7 IV. So let's just start with some specifications first, very quickly. As I mentioned at the beginning, it's the same sensor as the a7 IV, so the same results for both photo and video. But let's talk about some differences. So it only has one SD card slot as opposed to two on the a7 IV, and the SD card slot's actually on the other side. So there's actually nothing on the grip this time, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then in terms of the ports, it doesn't have a full-size HDMI port like the a7 IV, but for myself, it doesn't really matter, because if I need to use an external monitor, then I'll use my FX3. And then at the top, we have the 3.5mm jack and a USB-C port for charging and file transferring. Now, obviously, the biggest difference between this and the a7 IV is its size. So when I got the C2, I actually pre-ordered the small rig base plate for it. Now, you know I had to go with silver to match the silver camera, but the only problem that I had with the Ergonomics is that the grip just wasn't deep enough, and this base plate kind of fixes everything. Not only does it look fantastic, but it also has an Arca Swiss mounting plate so that you don't need to have any additional plates to just slide it onto a tripod. And just like with most small rig base plates, it has that extra door so that your battery door can open without any issue. And I think all in all, it just complements the look of the silver a7C II really nicely. And when paired with smaller lenses, I've been thoroughly enjoying using prime lenses lately. So I have the 35 1.4 G Master, and I'm filming on the 24 1.4 as well, and I interchange them both quite regularly. And this pairs really, really nicely. Now, not just small lenses as well, surprisingly enough, larger lenses, they don't feel like too much of a problem on the a7C II. I have this new Tamron 70-180 G2 that came out recently, and this actually doesn't look too bad on this setup. This is with the barrel fully extended, and I think that's one of the benefits of Tamron lenses is they're incredibly light, so it does balance really nicely on smaller camera bodies. But one of my favorite setups is the Zeiss 55 1.8 on this camera, and I have a Polar Pro mist filter on here with a step-up ring, which actually doesn't really look like it's a step-up ring because the barrel is larger than the actual filter thread. But obviously the biggest thing that I'm sure you're all wanting to know is, why is this better than the a7 IV? So there are a few kind of personal things for me, but the biggest thing that's kind of for everyone is that Sony have put in the new AI processor that the a7R5 has in this camera, along with the a7CR. So that means it has updated and improved autofocus. It uses AI algorithms to kind of guess and understand where body movements are going to be. It can focus on your eye even when the subject's head is turned away from the camera, which is actually really crazy. But I often notice that with my a7 IV and even my FX3, sometimes focus would be lost, particularly when subjects would turn around. But mainly with vehicles, I would often find, because I do a lot of automotive work, I would often find that it would lose tracking on a vehicle when it got to a certain point in the frame. And the a7C II with that new AI autofocus has the ability to track and lock on to vehicles, which is and kind of one of the biggest reasons why I was sold on this camera. But one of the coolest things, and it sounds really silly, but they added a new feature to the a7C II where you can have aspect ratio bars in your photo mode. So you can frame in a 2.35:1 aspect ratio. Now you can fully black out those bars, or you can just have them as a line or just kind of like grayed out, but it enables you to frame up in camera with a cinematic aspect ratio. Now, as I'm a filmmaker first and foremost, I love that cinematic aspect ratio, and obviously I'm making photos on my socials, and I'm a big fan of stacked photos as it allows you to tell a story, you know, in a 4:5 frame. If it's being posted on Instagram, I can stack 3 or 4 wide field frames in that single 4:5 frame to tell a story, and I've been thoroughly enjoying that lately. So just having the ability to compose in camera makes a whole world of difference, makes my life a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable in that shooting process. And you can view it back in camera with those black bars as well, but then when you import it into Lightroom, they're not there, but then I can just refer to the photo I took and then just add that aspect ratio crop in post. And I know you could say, oh, you can just crop in post anyway, but it's all about the shooting experience. It's all about making that shooting experience more enjoyable and more efficient and streamlined. So that combined with the updated autofocus processor, that's pretty much the main 2 reasons why I sold my a7 IV for this camera. And it's been fantastic. I've thoroughly enjoyed. I've literally only shot in that 2.35:1 aspect ratio for photos. 90% of the time for the last 2 weeks, that's what I've been doing. If you're looking to upgrade from the a7 IV, just do it, because you can probably break even by selling your a7 IV on the used market. That's what I did. And this just has so many more packed features, and it's just incredibly lightweight. And it's just the same sensor, so you're gonna get the exact same results out of the a7 IV, but in my opinion, you're gonna have a more enjoyable time doing it. Now, obviously, you may want a deeper grip, you may not like the rangefinder style, and you may want 2 memory card slots, and that's perfectly fine. The a7 IV is still a fantastic camera, and you know, Sony make other fantastic cameras as well. Obviously, I've just been comparing the a7 IV because that's what I came from. But all in all, after 2 weeks, this has been an absolute pleasure to use. If there's something that I haven't been able to touch upon that you really wanted to know, just drop a comment down below or reach out to me on Instagram at Johnny Roams. I'll do my best to get back to you. Thanks so much for watching, and definitely stay tuned for the new videos that'll be coming out with the 70 to 180 G2 and my review of the Zeiss 55 because it's such a killer lens. Thanks so much for the support, and until next time, I'll see you later.